So I was saying that on behalf of Enterprise DB, I welcome you all to this talk regarding data security using roles, privileges, and role-level security. We already had a topic on the we already had a talk on the similar topic, but this is different, as you would see when I present. So our objective here is to learn database roles, privileges, and role-level security. In addition to this objective, I would also cover the big picture of data security when you are working with PostgreSQL. Like if you are dealing with sensitive data, what options do you have to secure data, at what level you can do it, and is there any help available if you want to do it at any stage of the application development. So my name is Abbas and I have a master's degree in computer engineering. I've been working with Enterprise DB for the last 10 years or so. I have worked with replication systems, migration systems, and distributed transactions, PG Bouncer, and other stuff. So first up, let's talk about cryptography. You would know why I'm talking about this in a few slides. So cryptographic algorithms can be divided into two main categories, symmetric key encryption and asymmetric key encryption. And asymmetric key encryption is also called public key encryption. So in symmetric encryption, you have the ultimate use case is same in every secure application. You have sensitive information. You can call it a secure message that you want to transfer from Alice to Bob. That's the basic use case, and every time you are going to discuss the same thing. But there are different contexts in which you would like to send the message from Alice to Bob, right? So in this case, we are discussing the symmetric key encryption, where you have a message in the clear text, and you pass it from an encryption algorithm using a certain key that both Alice and Bob are sharing. And after the encryption algorithm, you get the ciphertext. And once you pass on the ciphertext to the decryption algorithm, which is the same as the encryption algorithm, using the same key, you get the clear text out. Note that you are basically using the same key on the encryption and decryption side. So the exchange of the key is something that you have to deal with in this scenario that we will discuss next. So this is the main design of the symmetric key systems, where you have Alice who wants to send a secret message to Bob, and both Alice and Bob are sharing a secret key. This is the secret key. And to send the message, what Alice has to do is to basically encrypt the clear text message using the secret key, create a ciphertext, share it over the public network with Bob, and what Bob can do is basically use the same secret key to decrypt the message. Now let's talk about public key encryption. In public key encryption, you have two keys. One is the public key that can be distributed to public, and the other is the private key, which must be kept secret. And the relationship between the two keys is such that if you encrypt using the public key, you can decrypt it using the private key, and vice versa, right? So this is what is shown here. You have a clear text. You encrypt the secret message using the private key, and you share the ciphertext with the world, over the public network. And the decryption algorithm can use the public key to decrypt the message that was encrypted using the private key to get clear text. So this is the diagram of how do you use the public key encryption. It has basically two parts. The first part is basically encrypting the message, and the second part is making sure that the sender is who who it is claiming to be. That is, the second part is for sender verification, and the first part is for making sure that only Bob can read the message, the encrypted message. So in the first part, what we do, first let's see what keys are involved in this whole scenario. This is the Alice's private key, which is not shared with public, and this is Bob's private key, which again is not shared with public. This is Alice's public key, and this is Bob's public key, which is shared with public, right? Now to send a message from Alice to Bob, the clear text message is encrypted using Bob's public key, and we get a ciphertext which is shared over the public network with Bob. The Bob can decrypt this ciphertext encrypted message using his private key, right? So there is no problem of sharing the keys. This part makes sure that only Bob can read the message. The second part is basically the sender verification, where what you do is basically you create a hash of the ciphertext, and the hash is called message digest, which is then encrypted using the private key of Alice, right? Which generates a signature. This is a digital signature. It is as if Alice is signing the message to claim that I am the sender of this message. Now, how would Bob know that this signature is of Alice's signature? Is that this signature is basically shared with Bob over the public network. When Bob receives this signature, he uses Alice's public key to get the message digest. And since Bob already has ciphertext, Bob applies the same hash function to generate another message digest. And if these two message digests are same, it proves that the sender was Alice. So I think I have described a very complex scenario very quickly. So I would take a few seconds break here to make sure that everybody understands what we were talking about. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer. Now, if we have understood this correctly, we should be able to now understand the complete picture. Imagine you are dealing with sensitive information and you are using PostgreSQL. So what options do you have to secure your information while you are working on the system? The first option is that the client application can send sensitive data in encrypted form. Now to do that, what we just described, the algorithms that I just described are used. The public key encryption mechanism is used to exchange the keys, because the public key encryption is slow, and generally you only use the public key encryption mechanisms to exchange the symmetric key that the both parties are supposed to share between them. So the second option is to secure the data on the channel that is being used to communicate with the database server. And to do that, you use SSL, which is the secure sockets layer. There are, very well-defined ways of doing it, and PostgreSQL supports it, from authentication to even the data that is being shared between the application and the database server. So you can do that as well. All the information that is sent from the client application to the database server would be encrypted, and nobody will be able to know what is happening, even if they are listening to the public network. Even if this is a public network and you are using SSL, nobody would be able to know what is the communication between the client and the server. The third option is to use PG Crypto module, which is a module provided by PostgreSQL that you can use to encrypt the sensitive information before it is stored in the database table. It has limited functionality, but it is useful, and it can be used to do encryption. Then you have the option to use operating system provided tools to secure data on the disk. And these are a few to name: eCryptFS, EncryptFS, and DMCrypt. These are all standard tools Linux provides, and you can use them to secure a disk partition. So the documentation, PostgreSQL documentation, does not provide any samples on how should you basically use, let's say, if I have a Java application and I want to use client-side client-side encryption, where should I start? Which APIs should I use? And how would my application look like? And how would my data look like? So these are the few sample applications that I have created for 3 use cases. One is a Java-based application that tries to use client-side encryption. The other is a C-based application. This again uses client-side encryption. And the third one is a Java-based application that uses pgcrypto for encrypting messages. All the 3 applications are again doing the same thing. They are basically secure message exchange applications. What they are doing is basically Alice is trying to send a secure message to Bob, which is going to get stored in a database table, and only Bob will be able to read the secure message. Not even the database administrator would be able to, read what is written in the message. So these applications use these algorithms, exactly the same mechanism. It is a sample application. You can use it to see how this part of the picture is used to exchange the secret key, and then once the secret key is exchanged, how is it used to encrypt data while the messages are exchanged between Alice and Bob. So what it does is basically it stores the all the 3 applications stores users and their friends, and then users can choose their friends to send secret messages to. And the friends can log in and then read the messages that were sent to them. So these are the sample applications that you can use. Okay, so one thing is left from the complete picture. Once you have logged into the database server, what a particular user would be able to do is controlled using a grant system and a row-level security system, which is a feature provided by the database server itself. So next we are going to talk about the role system and the row-level security. So once a user gets authenticated, authorization decides what a particular user can do. So in PostgreSQL, authorization is controlled by creating roles and assigning privileges to them. So what we are going to do next is we are going to basically see what privileges are provided in Postgres and what a particular privilege assigns a user to do, lets the user do. What we are going to do is we are going to create a user, and we are going to revoke all the rights from the user. The user will not be able to do anything. And then we will start trying to use the database, and we will get errors. And we will grant the privileges one by one, and we will see what a particular privilege lets the user do. Okay? So the first thing is the administrator creates a database, and the administrator creates a schema, and it creates a role Alice, and it creates a table in the schema, inserts some rows in the table, and it creates a function that is basically adding these 2 numbers and returning the result, right? This is the basic setup that we are going to see which privileges are available in Postgres and what they do. Next, the administrator is going to revoke privileges, all the privileges from public, because every role inherits privileges from the public role. So what we do is basically revoke all on database from public, on schema, on table, on function, and on language. Once we do that, we try to connect with the role that we created, Alice, and we get this error message, could not connect to the server, permission denied for the database. And the detail is the user does not have the connect privilege. Sometimes the error message is very precise and you know what to do. Sometimes you have to know what exact error message means and you have to act accordingly. So to handle this privilege, you have to grant connect on database to the user. Once you do that, you will be able to connect to the database using the Alice user. Next is the usage on schema. After connecting to the database, if I try to select from the table, I'm going to get the error, permission denied for schema. And to resolve this error, I am going to grant usage on schema to the user. Once granted, I will still not be able to select from the table because I would get the permission denied for table. And for that, I would grant select on table to Alice. Once the usage on schema and select on table is granted to the user, I would be able to select rows from the table. You can do a selective column selective select as well by adding columns within the braces after the select, but that is not discussed here. Next, I want to execute the function that we had created, and I get the error that permission is denied for the function IBV. For that, I'm going to grant execute on function to Alice. Once I grant this privilege, I would get the function executed. So this is connect, select, usage, and execute privilege. Similarly, if I try to insert a row into the table, I would get the permission denied error. If I grant insert on the table to Alice, then I will be able to insert a row in the table. Same is the case for update and delete. And similarly, truncate as well. For truncate, if I try to truncate the table, I would get the permission denied error. And if I grant truncate on table, I would be able to truncate rows from the table. So this basically concludes the first part, where I have select, insert, update, delete, truncate, usage, connect, and execute permissions, privileges assigned to the user. Next is create. I want to create a table, table T2, which references the primary key of table T1. So the first thing that I cannot do is I don't have the create privileges for the schema, so I would not be able to create this table. So the permission is denied for schema. Once I grant create on schema to Alice, I would get the permission denied for table T1 because this references is also a privilege that has to be granted if a user can refer a table within another table creation statement. Once I do that, grant references on table MST1 to Alice, I will be able to create a table that references another table in the schema. Now comes usage. I want to create another function, which is create or replace function. I'm creating it within the MS schema, but the permission is denied for language PLPG-SQL. And if I grant usage on language PLPG-SQL to Alice, then I will be able to, create the function. Next is trigger. If I create a trigger on the table, then I would get the permission denied error, and I can grant trigger on table to Alice. Only then would I be able to create the trigger. Next, I want to create a temporary table within the database. So I would get permission denied to create temporary tables. And for this particular case, I would have to grant temporary on database to Alice, and then I will be able to create the temporary table. So these are the privileges that are available within PostgreSQL that can be granted, and we saw which error messages are thrown in case these particular privileges are not granted to a user. While displaying the access privileges, this particular shorthand notation is used for select it is R, for update W, and etc. So let's say if I want to, and the format is grantee is equal to privileges / grantor. Like Abbas is granting these privileges to Abbas, or Abbas is granting these privileges to Alice. So T and C would mean temporary and connect, right? So if I list, this is a pSQL command, and if I list source DB, then I would see the access privileges column. And to read the access privileges column, I know that the first name is the grantee, the second name is the grantor, and the letters before the slash have to be decoded using this table. Similarly, for schema, Abbas has granted U and C to Alice. U means usage, and C means create. Usage was and create was for creating tables within the schema, and usage was for executing the functions within the schema. Next, we display the privileges for the table, and we see that Abbas has granted A, R, W, D, X, T to Alice. All the privileges that are possible have been granted to Alice. Similarly, for the function, execute permission has been granted by Abbas to Alice. So there is a better way of displaying privileges, and that is using the ACL explode function. You can query the rel ACL column of PG class to see the same information in a shorthand. And if you pass this shorthand information to ACL explode function, then it is going to display in a better format the grantor OID. Let's see here, 10, the grantee OID 16438, and then the granted privilege in name and whether it is grantable or not. So this is a better way of displaying the ACL list using the ACL explode function. Next, you have some system provided functions like has table privilege. Is Alice able to insert in this table? Yes or no? Similarly, has schema privilege, provides the same functionality. Next, we are going to look at row-level security. In Postgres, it is possible to restrict access to table rows for a certain role while using select, insert, update, or delete. In order to understand what row-level security can do for us, we are going to create a sample message exchange application. Users will be able to store messages in the database for their friends, and the friends will be able to read the messages that have been sent to them. The database will have two tables. One is to store the users and their friends, and the other would store the messages. So the following 4 policies will be applied using RLS. The first is that users can only see their own friends. The second is that user can only add their own friends. The third is that the users can send messages to his or her friends only. And the fourth one is that the user can read only the messages that were sent to him or her, right? Very logical. If you have a message exchange application, you would not want users to see other users' friends, and you would not want users to read other messages, the messages that have been sent to other friends, right? So these 4 policies we are going to implement using RLS and the grant system that we just studied. You cannot, use the RLS alone. You would have to use the grant system as well. Next is we have already, in the last talk, we have already studied with check and using clause. I would just, I'm just putting it in some other words. So RLS policies can be created by either using with check clause or using clause. The main difference, there are 2 differences basically between with check and using clause is that using clause does not apply to inserts, whereas with check does not apply to deletes. This is a simple rule that I have written to make sure that you do not get confused while you are creating the policies. And the second difference is that when a policy is creating with check clause is violated, an error message is thrown by the database server. Whereas if the policy created with using clause is violated, the query fails, but it does not throw any error message. It just reports that 0 rows were updated. We will see the difference between the 2, right? Now we are going to create the sample application that I talked about. And the first thing is that admin user and the database is created. The second step is that admin user creates roles, messages, exchange application tables, and inserts some roles as users in the tables. So a schema is created, MEA, message exchange application, and 4 roles are created. All are non-super and have the login permission. And these 2 tables are created. The first table is supposed to store the users, TBL users, and the second table is supposed to store the messages. So the first table has a primary key, user ID, and username, and user friends, which is an integer array. And the second table, the TBL messages, has a message ID, which is the primary key, the from UID, the sender, the to UID, the intended recipient, the message, and the date at which it was sent on. Very simple, but to make sure that we understand how RLS policies would be implemented. Next, we insert the 4 roles that we had created in the users table, Tina, Eve, Tom, and Harry, without any friends. Next, admin revokes all privileges, like we did in the last section, all on schema from public, revoke all on table from public, revoke all on table messages from public. Now, admin explicitly grants required privileges to the roles. First is the usage on schema to all the 4 users. The second one is select on both the tables to all the users, and update on the users table to all the users, insert on the messages table to all the users, update on the messages table to all the users. Because users need to update their friends, and users need to add messages in the messages table, or they can update it as well. And also users need to read the messages, so select has to be provided to on messages table to all the users. At this point, all the users will be able to read all the messages. There is no limitation, there is no restriction that if a message is sent for Tom, then Tina will not be able to read it, since select is possible on the messages table for all the users. So the next thing that we are going to do is basically implement the first 2 policies. The first policy is users can only update their own friends, and the second is users can only see their own friends. So this is how we are going to implement this policy. What we are going to do is we are going to create add friends S on the table as permissive for select to all the users using uname is equal to current user. What this means is that as long as the username and the current user are same, then the user will be able to do the select on table users, right? Similarly, this is for update, the same thing. As long as the username is same as the current user, the user will be able to update that particular row in the users table, right? Note that the policies are not created in any schema. Although the tables are in schema and all the other, these are schema-less objects of the database. Now, let's see what happens if I try to select from the table users, right? I think I missed one step. This alter table enable row level security. This is a required step. By default, row level security is not enabled on the tables. So if you are going to implement any rule using the row level security, you have to alter the table to enable row level security. Anyway. So if you select from the table users, you would see that the condition that I had given in the policy is being used as a qual. TBL user uname is equal to current user. It is a filter qual that is used while selecting the rows from the table. So nothing could bypass this, and obviously whenever the select is executed, it is only going to return the row that contains the same username which is currently logged in, right? Like we see, if we select from a table users, we only get one row, which has no friends. Again, we try to see what happens if you try to update. Tina wants to make friends with the rest of the users, so Tina would execute this statement, update table users, set friends as 2, 3, and 4, where UID is equal to 1. Again, you would see the filter clause, which is going to make sure that only the row in which the username is Tina can be updated by Tina. And once you do that, once you update, you set the friends of user ID 1 as 2, 3, 4, you get a successful result, right? Now let's try to add friends for some other user, right? Let's say that I am logged in as Tina, but I want to update the friends of user ID 2. So no error is thrown, but update says 0 rows only, right? Because this policy was created using the using clause. Now let's add some more friends. Eve. For Eve, we do the same thing. The user Eve2 adds friends as 1, 3, and 4. And similarly, for user ID 3, we add friends as 1 and 2. Now it's the time to implement the other policy, which was the user can send messages to another user only if the user ID of the friend is already in the uFriends array, right? A user can send a message to only his friends that were added in the previous step. So to do that, I am going to create a function, isFriend. This is the user ID, and this is the friend ID. This function is going to tell me whether this user ID is a friend of this user ID. P underscore FID, is P underscore FID a friend of P underscore UID? So a single query can do that. What I am going to do is, since I am using arrays, I can say, is any of the uFriends array equal to the past friend ID from the table users where user ID is the past user ID? If yes, then the result will be true, otherwise it will be false. If you do not understand this query, please let me know. I think you do. So let's see whether the function works or not. This is the status. 4 has no friends, 1 has 2, 3, 4, 2 has 1, 3, 4, and 3 has 1 and 2. So I am asking, is 4 a friend of 3? Is 4 a friend of 3? No. 4 is not a friend of 3, so false. So I'm asking, is 1 a friend of 3? Is 1 a friend of 3? Yes. 1 is in the friend list of 3, right? This is false, but this is true. Now I'm going to alter the table messages to enable row level security on it. And I am going to implement a policy send messages on table TBL messages as permissive for insert for all the users with check that isFriend returns true. Only if the isFriend function returns true, then this policy is going to let the insert. Similarly, update, the same thing. So once I have this policy in place, I can try and send some messages. Now here, if I try to insert into table messages from UID to UID message and sent on, one is trying to send to a message, hello, this is the first message and this is the time. So you can see that there is no call because this query was created using the with check option, which is not implemented using calls. It is implemented using at the execution time. So if I execute this particular statement, I would get the positive result because I am sending a message to user 1 is sending a message to user 2, which is already a friend, right? Similarly, this would also pass because user 1 is a friend with user 3. Now, here, user 3 is trying to send a message to user 1. So we have added 3 messages in the table messages. One message is from user 1 to user 2, the second is from user 1 to user 3, and the third one is from user 3 to user 1. Now, let's try to send a message from user 3 to user 4 who are not friends with each other, right? So since this policy was created using with check clause, when I try to execute this insert statement, I get an error. New row violates row level security policy for table this. Now, see that an error is thrown in case of the with check messages. Now, now comes the last part where a user can read messages only if they were sent to him. So what we do here is first we create a function that returns the user ID of the currently logged in user. Remember in the table users table, we had a user ID which was the primary key and user name which was the name of the logged in user, right? So what this function does is basically it tells me the user ID of the currently logged in user by firing a query on the table user. First make sure that there is at least a row that contains the name of the currently logged in user, and if not, then it is going to return 0. Otherwise, it is going to return me the user ID of the currently logged in user. And when I create the policy, what I do is that I would just simply say create policy read messages on this table as permissive for select to using m_2_u_id is equal to m_get user ID. Yeah, that is, let the users select from this table only if the to user ID is the same as the currently logged in user ID. This will make sure that only the rows where the user ID is same as the currently logged in user ID would be visible to the user. So this is going to make sure that I will not be able to read messages which are not intended for me. Now let's see, again we will see that if I fire a select from the table, I will not see any calls. But if I execute this message, I would see only the message that was sent to me. I'm not going to see, remember we had added 3 messages, but here I am only getting the message 2 because I am logged in as user 2. Again, if I log in as Tom, which is user ID 3, I would only get the messages that were sent to user ID 3. And if I logged in a user Harry, which had no messages in the table, so if I select, I will get no message for me, right? Now, this is an important way of looking at which policies are currently defined. And remember, I told you the using policies are displayed using qual, and with check policies are different. So you get the policies in different columns. So if you fire this query, select table name, command, qual, comma with check from PG policies. PG policies is the catalog table that stores all the row level security policies that we have created. So if you fire this query, you would see that for table users, we have a select row level policy that is implementing this call. And then we have an insert row level policy on table messages that is restricting based on this particular condition. Last point, this is a GUC that you can set to off. If it is set to off, then an error is thrown if any query results would get filtered by a policy, and this is required for PG dump. And there is an option in PG dump, -- enable row level security, to make sure that only the rows to which a particular user has the access to are returned from the PG dump. So with that, I conclude my presentation. If anybody has any questions or clarifications, I would be glad to answer. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your time.